The first signal is not an explosion, not a siren, not even a visible failure. It is silence where there should be noise. Refrigerators stop humming, cellular data stalls mid-refresh, traffic lights freeze in conflicting patterns. Within minutes, the invisible lattice that supports modern life, the electrical grid, the data networks, the logistics chains, begins to fragment. This is the onset of a grid down scenario, and the first 72 hours determine whether an individual transitions into controlled survival or irreversible vulnerability. The danger is not only the outage itself, but the speed at which systems dependent on continuous energy collapse in sequence. Water pressure drops as pumping stations fail. Fuel distribution halts because electronic payment systems are offline, and emergency services become saturated, forced to triage not just people, but infrastructure. Analysis of historical blackouts and disaster responses reveals a consistent pattern. The majority of casualties and long-term hardship are not caused by the initiating event, but by secondary system failures. During major outages, hospitals switch to backup generators designed for limited durations, not indefinite operation. Urban populations dependent on just-in-time supply chains exhaust local food availability within hours as panic buying begins. Telecommunications degrade rapidly because cell towers rely on battery backups that typically last between 4 to 8 hours on their normal load, significantly less under surge conditions. The misunderstanding most people carry is that survival begins when the crisis becomes visible, when authorities issue warnings, or when media coverage intensifies. In reality, survival begins at the moment of disruption, often before the average person recognizes that a disruption has occurred. The hidden science underlying the 72-hour window is rooted in system inertia and decay curves. Critical infrastructure does not fail all at once. It degrades in predictable stages based on redundancy design and resource buffers. Electrical grids, for example, operate on precise frequency balance. When generation and load fall out of sync, protective systems trigger shutdowns to prevent damage, causing cascading failures across interconnected regions. Water systems rely on electrically powered pumps to maintain pressure. Without them, gravity-fed reserves deplete quickly, and contamination risks increase as backflow occurs. Refrigeration loss accelerates bacterial growth in perishable food, reaching unsafe levels within hours, depending on ambient temperature. These processes are governed by thermodynamics, microbiology, and fluid dynamics, not speculation. Evidence from events such as the Northeast blackout of 2003 and more recent regional grid failures shows that individuals who acted within the first 6 hours, securing water, stabilizing food resources, establishing communication alternatives, experienced significantly lower stress and risk over the following days. Those who delayed action, assuming rapid restoration, faced compounded challenges as resources became scarce and mobility was restricted. Emergency management frameworks emphasize the concept of the golden window, a short period immediately after disruption where proactive measures yield disproportionate benefits. This is not widely understood because public messaging often focuses on reassurance rather than urgency, aiming to prevent panic rather than encourage immediate tactical preparation. The survival implications are direct and unforgiving. Water becomes a primary constraint within the first 24 hours. Without active pumping, municipal systems cannot sustain pressure, and contamination risks escalate as untreated water enters distribution lines. Individuals must secure potable water before pressure drops, not after. This means filling containers, bathtubs, and any available storage with tap water while it is still flowing, understanding that treatment options later may be limited or resource-intensive. Food stability follows closely behind. Perishable items must be prioritized for immediate consumption or preservation, while non-perishables become strategic reserves. Energy management shifts from convenience to necessity. Every battery, every fuel source becomes part of a finite system that must be rationed with precision. As the situation escalates, the second phase begins: communication collapse. The average person assumes that mobile networks are resilient, that emergency services maintain uninterrupted connectivity. The reality is that network infrastructure is designed for efficiency, not sustained overload during widespread outages.
When power fails, towers switch to battery backups that are rapidly drained by increased usage. The sudden spike in call attempts, data requests, and location pings accelerates depletion. Within hours, networks become unreliable or completely unavailable. This creates a vacuum where information spreads faster than verified data, and decision-making becomes impaired. Transitioning into the next stage requires understanding that communication is not merely about staying informed, it's about coordination and situational awareness. Individuals who rely solely on centralized networks lose the ability to adapt in real time. Alternative communication methods, battery-powered radios, pre-established contact plans, localized signaling become critical. Yet the misunderstanding persists that these are outdated or unnecessary in a digital age. The hidden principle is redundancy. Systems designed with multiple independent pathways are inherently more resilient. This applies not only to communication, but to every aspect of survival during the initial 72 hours. The danger continues to evolve as human behavior interacts with system failure. Panic buying, traffic congestion, and misinformation amplify the physical constraints of the environment. Fuel shortages emerge not because fuel is absent, but because distribution mechanisms fail. Gas stations cannot operate pumps without electricity, and payment systems cannot process transactions. This creates bottlenecks that lead to conflict, delays, and further resource depletion. The analysis of these patterns shows that early action, before visible scarcity, provides a decisive advantage. Those who secure resources during the initial window avoid the cascading effects of collective panic. Misunderstanding this timeline leads to critical errors. Many believe that staying put without preparation is safer than acting early, or that waiting for official instructions ensures better outcomes. However, emergency response systems are designed to manage large populations, not to optimize individual survival. The hidden science of risk distribution indicates that centralized responses inevitably prioritize the greatest number, leaving gaps in coverage and delays in assistance. Evidence from disaster response studies consistently shows that self-sufficiency during the first 72 hours is the most reliable predictor of survival and stability. The implications intensify as infrastructure degradation intersects with environmental factors. Temperature extremes, whether heat or cold, accelerate physiological stress and resource consumption. Without climate control, indoor environments can become hazardous within hours. Heat leads to dehydration and heat stroke, while cold increases the risk of hypothermia. These are not distant threats, they are immediate consequences of energy loss. The escalation is subtle but relentless, transforming a manageable inconvenience into a life-threatening condition. As the first day closes, the system has not stabilized. It has shifted into a new equilibrium defined by scarcity and uncertainty. The transition into the second day introduces additional layers of complexity: sanitation breakdown, medical access limitations, and psychological stress. Each of these factors compounds the others, creating feedback loops that accelerate deterioration. Understanding this progression is essential because it reframes the 72-hour window not as a passive waiting period, but as an active operational phase where decisions have exponential impact.